Hello, in this video, I'm going to try to start sharing more about this state of sadness and suffering that God feels most of the time that I haven't really been talking about because nobody's really ready for that. So, already this is hard to talk about because this is normally the kind of conversation you would only have with, say, a therapist or a close partner. So you can see how for me to try to share this on camera in a public fashion is difficult to do. And, if there's nobody that I feel like could understand it, then I'm not likely to want to share that. So that's what held me back. And when I'm out and about in public, I don't generally show it very much either. Because, again, it's too much. Like, people are not ready for that. So I generally just kind of hide it from people. But of course, if I don't talk about it, then nobody's going to understand exactly how I feel and how God feels enough to get here. So you might hear some teachers that like to say stuff like suffering is not real, it's self-constructed, or it's part of the ego, stuff like this. Well, unfortunately, that's not true. These teachers who are saying that, they're just not close to the state. They're still actually in the ego conscious, and that's what's preventing them from feeling this feeling of sadness. So the ego structure is like sort of shielding them and blocking them from that until such time they can reach more light towards where I am. So it's very tricky because even someone sort of close to me, like Matt Kahn, is sort of close, but even he's not picking that up. So you really have to reach quite far along, like into the light, to feel what I feel. And so that's why it's very difficult, because the vast majority of spiritual teachers are not accessing this state. So they're just telling you stuff that they're accessing, right? Because they're not feeling sad and grief. They're telling people that that's how God is, basically. But that's not how God is. So I'm going to try to give you a list of like reasons why this is, like why God is sad, to the best of my ability. And this is tricky because, you know, it gets personal, even if I don't want it to be that personal. Like, unfortunately, because I am one with God, whatever life experiences I've had or continue to have, that's basically God's experience, right? So, unfortunately, I can't completely untangle the personal from the metaphysical. Um, but I can try to come up with like more metaphysical reasons and more personal reasons, and where they sort of start to merge and become basically one. So, metaphysically speaking, what makes the most sense is that if what I'm telling you is true, that only the first Jesus Christ and now me is accessing the state, has ever reached the state and fully understood it, you can imagine how incredibly isolating this is. It's really like the man on the moon that nobody knows about. Like, sure, people know about Jesus. That's not what I mean. I mean that nobody truly knows what it's like to reach the state, except for the first Christ and now me. So this is already an incredibly isolating experience. I basically go around the world where nobody can truly understand me, where I cannot truly communicate fully with someone. That's really what it's like. So there's always something I'm not able to share and hiding because of the state differences. So this feeling of, you could say, loneliness and isolation, that contributes to this feeling of sadness. I think that's pretty understandable. If, say, you can imagine if you were somehow put on the moon and nobody knows you're there to rescue you or meet you there, And it's been like that for a long time, not a short period of time. You can see how you can be incredibly upset about that. Because even God is like a social creature, you could say. Like I'm not exactly antisocial. It's just I cannot find people, close to me. So that's one, you could say, metaphysical reason why that is. And you can also think of it like a sort of like empty nest situation, where the children of God are not returning. They're just stuck at various levels. They're not fully returning. They have partial understandings of God and misunderstandings of God, and they're constantly telling other people about these false understandings of God. And if you're God, if you're the true one, and you're just sitting here and listening to all that, and you're just like, it's incredibly frustrating because people tend to agree with those false teachings because they're closer to false teachers. Like again, it's like conscious, and like you're more able to agree with people close to you, right? That's mostly what people are looking for. They're looking for someone that agrees with them, generally speaking. So if I'm in disagreement most of the time because you guys aren't here, then the likely result is that people are just going to ignore me or reject me. So that series of like rejection, you could say, that contributes to my suffering, and there's not even that much I can do about it. So it's this like hopeless, helpless kind of situation. And normally if someone's sad or you could say going through depression, what do? Well, there's generally like therapists they could talk to, right? Maybe prescribe some kind of like medication, or maybe there are spiritual teachers as well that they could find like some kind of comfort in. But for me, I have nobody to turn to because I'm literally at the Godhead. There's nobody that can help me. Not very much. You would have to reach pretty much where I am to help me, if you know what I mean. It's like the therapist has to be either equal to you or above you in terms of their awareness and understanding of things, right? To be able to help you. If your therapist is actually less awake and less conscious than you are, then your therapist is not going to be able to help you very much. You're going to want to move on and try to find another therapist, right? So that's kind of my situation, is that I've exhausted all kinds of therapists, healers, spiritual teachers. I've exhausted literally everyone. So the only thing that could help me at this point is for someone to get to where I am. But like I said, generally people will reject me, and they're not wanting to do this work. So, you know, for the reason of being very isolated and not have much control over that, and for the reason of, I guess, well, they kind of go hand in hand, that nobody wants to get here. That contributes to a lot of this sadness and suffering. So those are some like metaphysical reasons, you could say. And of course, I'm also caught in this situation where it's not entirely safe for me to just try to tell a lot of people that Jesus Christ has returned to me. Like that's not exactly safe for me to just do, if you know what I mean. Because again, the immediate reaction is usually a negative one. It's not a positive one, despite what people might think. Like you might hear people constantly talk about wanting the return of Christ and all that, but when it actually happens, and because people can't recognize me, the reaction is not a good one. Generally speaking, people generally think I'm just. It's like, how dare you claim that kind of thing, you know. Um, there's lots of other kinds of reactions. Like, I literally had this one guy who started saying stuff like, you know, he feels like, he needs to pray for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm basically off track for claiming to be Christ. Um, Again, all these reactions, it's understandable, but again, it puts me in this position where I'm just very isolated. And even when I'm not trying to claim to be this person, even when I'm just out and about and trying to, like, you could say, talk to people, uh, even then, the reaction is a lot of times negative. Not always. Like, it's like, but I would say the majority of times, people don't react well to me. There's only like rare cases where someone might be friendly towards me. That's what I'm saying. So all of that is like contributes, and as well, this state basically feels everything the most. You could say. So if you have felt sadness before in the past, then I just feel the maximum sadness. Like everything's amped up. So if you refer to let's say the music I've shared, whatever's in those feelings are contained in those works of art, I just feel more of it, or I'm able to feel more of it. So it's like everything's just amplified. So including the feeling of sadness, and that's how you end up with just the state of like being, I guess, sad. And it's always changing based on how far along people are, especially specific teachers, how far along they are, how much closer they're getting towards me. Like, because the closer they get to me, the more they're able to understand the state, right? Because for a very long time, I was just dealing with teachers who are not even remotely close to me. So that's been changing, and that helps to some extent. I would say more than to some extent, but yeah. So that's why God is not necessarily in a good state, like in a good mood, you say. And just current events happening can sometimes trigger episodes as well, like the war in Ukraine and the Iran war and just wars in general and bad leadership. Like I have to watch all these events unfold because of mostly bad leadership. Um, you guys probably know who I'm talking about. And so basically leaders leading people astray kind of thing, and there's not much I can do about it. Like, not personally, because again, it's not like I can suddenly be talking to the president of the United States, for example. But on the other hand, I'm glad that Pope Leo was, doing some of the work that I would be doing, using his position. So I'm glad that he's been, you could say, doing good with his position of authority and influence to counter some of Donald Trump's narrative regarding like the Iran war and perhaps the Ukraine war as well. So again, those things help me when someone in position of authority understands what God is and what God's will is and speaks for that. That helps me. And so, and when someone doesn't understand and does like the opposite of that makes things worse for me as well. So this kind of tension is always around, and so my mood kind of follows that as well. Yeah, I mean, I could say, I guess talking about it with the right people helps. It's just hard for me to find that. As you can imagine, you couldn't just open up about these things with just anyone. Like, normally people would be talking to like a therapist about this kind of stuff. But because I ran out of therapists to talk to, I just have to deal with it alone. Or have that's how I've been dealing with it. It's just alone. Most of the time, I do have a friend I talk to from time to time, which has been helpful. But again, not to the fullest extent, because that's not possible unless someone's state is very close to me. what else can I say about that? Yeah, so teachers were saying stuff like God can't or shouldn't be suffering, like this kind of messaging. That's not right. Like they're saying that because they're not close to me. They're still they're still sheltered from the state by their ego. Um, Teachers like Shania Murty and Peter Ralston, I think, likes to say these things. They're not that close to me. So just be careful when you're hearing that, because it's like self confirmation. If you're close to their state, of course that's gonna sound true to you, right? That's how this works. And so then you're just self reinforcing this. It's like I watch you guys reinforce each other like all the time. So yeah, I think that's probably all I have to say for now about this. I hope that helps to clarify some misunderstandings.